everyone. Did I start late? Oh, y'all just okay. We all just got here at the same time. Peace, everyone. Um, okay. I'm gonna get to the chat, but I want to open up the space first. So give thanks, everyone, for clicking on this video, or if you're here live, give thanks for being here. This is our midday affirmative. I'm Achoti Yaffe, and today we're gonna be talking about release. I do want to acknowledge that today is Yom Rishon, or first day. So it is the first day or first Yom in the cycle of our cycle of 7. So we get those first 6 days to hit the ground running, and then recoup on a well-deserved rest, hopefully. And also, thank you to Chief Yuya for opening or allowing this space, and as always, allowing us to deliberate on, our understanding or understandings, or even overstandings of, his teachings as well as scripture. These are the places to really commune with one another and, deliberate the truth. The truth is to be deliberated. I think that's the last line of the forward of the preface of the Anu Way. The truth is to be deliberated, not deliberated. Well, delivered too, because knowledge is to be received. So give thanks as everyone for being here. So I'm going to head over to the chat really quickly. Peace, Aki Jason, nice to see you. Peace, Alpha Woman Now. Peace, Abba Ras Kush, Basamelek, and Sovereignty. What's up, y'all? So we're gonna talk about release today. So I'll open up by saying, like, what do I mean about release? Because it could mean a bunch of things. Like, release the clutch, release the gas, it could be anything. So well, I guess, those would be concrete things to release. But we're going to talk about release in a way where we're releasing, how we release thoughts or emotions or feelings and the importance thereof, right? So, something that, I'll start it off really practical, something that I used to do. Well, I'm going to say I used to do because I haven't done it yet this year, but I'm going to do it. And I say I haven't done it yet this year because usually in May, and it is June 4th. But May would normally start the month that I declutter my space, right? And I have since, like, relocated since, I've had to actually do that, which also meant, like, I had way less stuff to have to declutter. However, you still accumulate, right? Like, I think the moment we move into a space, we just immediately start to accumulate, and that's why when we move out. And I recently had this conversation with one of the sisters yesterday. When we move, we don't even realize how much stuff, and I'm saying stuff to keep it clean, how much stuff we have until we actually have to pack it up and clean it out. And then we have to make that decision. Do I need this? Do I need this? So unfortunately, what happens is, like, then we declutter in that moment, or sometimes then we pick it up and take it with us. And that's never good. And I had some of those moments, which is why, just because, like, moving into a new space and having less stuff doesn't mean I don't need to, like, declutter. So back to the semi story. Decluttering the space is something that I do, like, every year, at least twice a year, like spring and winter, like those major kind of season changes, to get rid of things, right? So I would go through the closet and, remove any clothing that I no longer wear, whether it fit or not. Like, if it's something that's been sitting there for past a year or two, and I think some people say 5 years, but I'm like, if it has not gone on in a whole Gregorian calendar year or more, it does not need to be there. You can give it away, sell it on Poshmark, giveup.com, or whatever those websites, Goodwill, wherever it is that you need to send it. Garbage bags full of stuff, just, getting it out of the house. Also papers, one thing I always used to, like, hoard, and I'll just call it what it is. It's like bills and stuff. It's like, well, the IRS is supposed to keep stuff 7 years. Listen, you do not need cell phone bills from before they had smartphones, even before they had flip phones, and it's an Ericsson. Those can go. That can get out of the way. So that's what I'm talking about when I say release. Like, what are those things, both emotional, spiritual, and physical, that we're holding on to, that really need to be released? So I'll ask a question. I'm going to, ask a question for the chat to answer, and then I'll keep moving. I see some more people have joined. Peace, Ima Sequoia, and top 10 speakers. Sequoia. Peace. So the question, based on the quick description so you got, or context for what today's midday affirmative is about is for you guys to share, like, what does it mean to release? And if you're joining this afterwards, put it in the description, not the description, that's our part. Put it in the comments, because we do answer the comments and are happy to, get back to you. We always do answer the comments. So put it in the comments. So like I was saying, so, there, I use that time to like declutter because that physical space, it is connected to what's happening emotionally, like how much are we hoarding, and the interesting part, like it happens really easily. So I'll give like another like concrete example. We just had an event, and there are things that we keep from our events, like whether it's boxes and things that have to be gone through. And so I have like a lot of boxes and things from donations that have to be sent, given out. So, those things, while they have to be, given when we have events, there's still like a place that they need to be stored. And so until I get like that space, it's literally like clutter and hoarding. So if I'm not keeping the space clean or decluttered or, organized, then it gives a sense of what's going on internally, so everything. And we've said like during Shimas, during Friday fellowships and midday affirmative, she says all the time, what's on the internal will reflect on the external. And even if we try to control it or help it, like it comes through. It's almost like supernatural. Peace, Chief. Peace on the radio. So yeah. So the point is to like release what doesn't serve us any longer. So whether it is something that is more, intangible, those emotional or feelings or thoughts, versus physical, like they all need to be released so that you can cleanse the palate, if you will, right? So we can't bring the garbage with us. So that kind of goes back to my example about like moving, when we're leaving a space for an old space for a new space. Like even the idea of bringing in like vacuums and brooms and mops is like, get new things, because these were the tools used for this old space, and they carry this old energy on it, and you want to move into a space where you can have new energy. And so if you have the opportunity, you have the ability to refresh some of those things, because I understand like not everything we can refresh in that moment, but when we have the opportunity to refresh, we should. And so like taking the opportunity to refresh a lot of things, not bringing garbage with us, it says a lot. And so even in that move, I still brought stuff that needed to be dispelled. Whatever the reason was, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the reason was. But I still brought things that needed to be released before coming into a new space, and I didn't. And some of that stuff is bills and stuff, old bills that just need to be burned. But, they're going to be burned. Y'all can hold me to it. Next time I'm on the line, like, did you burn that stuff? And it's either going to be a yes or a no. So, you have to like get rid of those things. And I use the word like they are physically going to be burned, and a lot of things have physically been burned, because it's almost like the idea of arising out of the ashes, right? It's like when we think of like a phoenix, like the phoenix, when the phoenix is old and dies, it burns up, it combusts. And then, it comes out anew, it's born anew out of the ashes, anew out of the ashes, right? I'm gonna go into the chat really quick. Apple Woman now says release would mean letting go and allowing what is intended to happen. Massimilian says answer to release is to return the liberty of something that has been seized or claimed by another force or thing. Alvarez Kush says to allow something or someone to depart from our physical, mental, and or emotional cipher. The British phrase "unhand me good." Maybe that's what we need to say sometimes. Next time I have like, feeling unhand me good, sir. I don't know if they're good if they got you seized up in the moment. I also think of the phrase release the demons. They have to be released. Chief says release is a way to loosen judgment about the connection to something. Moving from personal to impersonal, abandoning my own will, and removing fear of loss. Give thanks. And that's yeah. Yeah, I don't think none of the answers are wrong, and I'm not here to judge the answers, but I give thanks for all of the answers. And they're right in line with, like, basically, like, what we're gonna, go over today. So even the body, I see you, Ema Sequoia, even the body releases. We eliminate all the time, and if you regular, you eliminate every day, right? The body even releases waste naturally, and even one of the less graphic forms could be sweat. Just in the way that we sweat, it's just one of the ways that the body releases. It's a byproduct of what has already been used by the body from what we ingest. It's ridding itself of toxins and those things that we no longer need. Sequoia. Ema Sequoia says to do away with or allow something new to come in, right? Because you're making room for something else. And interestingly about that, it's like we have to also use our discernment to not make room for the same thing to come in, and it's just in a different package, right? And how many of us have done that? I have. Like, it looks different on the outside, like the physical, the face, face value looks different, but what's really going on is the same thing, right? Aki Jason says, release to me is letting go the pressure, whether physical or internal, all the small stuff. All the small stuff I collect adds up like a jar of screws. I keep that. I will never sort after construction. Oh, interesting. Are you talking about, like, that's not like figuratively, you're talking about, like, in real life? Okay. All the small stuff. That's interesting because it makes me think of, like, and y'all tell me, like, how some people keep the old water bottles, like the big water jugs from, like in an office, like, if you the water cooler, and we put change in it and stuff, like we fill it up with money. I don't know if that would be like not releasing, like, well, maybe it would be if you never took it to get turned in, to use it, to make use of it. Maybe it would be, but y'all let me know. But that's what I think of, and that's only because you said like a jar of screws. And I think I probably have screws too, loose screws. I have some screws too in the cabinet somewhere that I keep. Yeah, and yeah, there are some things that we keep and we don't even, like, when we go around and we declutter. And I'm speaking figuratively as and realistically and concretely. When we go around, we release the things that we think are cluttered, like the obvious things sometimes, and the less so obvious things, because, like, oh, well, I actually use that, but it's like, how often do you really use it? And so how often do we leave the less obvious things and not release them, right? Ema Sequoia says, yes, making sure we're not recreating the same thing in a different package. I got you. Recreating things in a different package. Yes. So like I was saying, like, even the body eliminates, and sweat is one of those ways that we rid ourselves. The body, like, automatically rids itself of something that it no longer needs. And there are some people who do have, I don't know if it's considered a disorder, but there are some people who don't sweat easily, and the body literally holds on, like they may turn red, but the perspiration is not as it doesn't release as much as it should. And so then what happens is they're holding on to all these toxins. I don't know what they do. I've met a person like that. I can't remember what she said she did, but she really doesn't sweat. Her body literally just gets overheated. And so what happens when the body gets overheated, you're in danger of passing out. Chief Abarasco says, eliminate the containment or binding of something. Yes, unhand me, good sir. She said, man, oh man, those mason jar screws, nuts, and bolts. Even old digital connectors, as if the world hasn't gone wireless. Oh my gosh, I am sitting next to a box that has a lot of wires, and it's like, why? Why are they there? They have printers. You can get a wireless printer, right? But the ones with wires are cheaper. But that's another story. She says we hold on to the fears of what we may need and not have in the moment. And I do that all the time. It's like, but I might need this later. But then what that really is, it's hoarding. And so, and I think, like, what we do is we think, I'll speak for myself. I used to think that hoarding was not hoarding until it got to that like egregious level where it was just like dangerous, unsafe, and unclean, like hoarders, like you know what you see on like on that television program, Hoarders. But it's not. It's anything like because you could be an organized hoarder, you know, so you're keeping things that no longer serve you. Like that's exactly what it is, because if you don't need it, it is hoarding. What do you need it for? And even thinking about things that we need, do they have to be, you know, and this is not this is not including when we're talking about prep, right? So I want to be clear. Not when we're talking about preparations, you know, prepping for bugging in and bugging out. That's something different. But when we're thinking about the things like in our daily lives, that we're keeping around because we're not going to need, it's not something you need for prep. And it's something that you can actually go and get when you need it, right? At the time that you need it. But you're keeping those things. I'll give you another example. And like, and you know, of course, in my mind, like I rationalized it, and it's just like, no, this makes sense. So sometimes when I'm able to drive and go shopping, I don't always get to a particular store because we're not promoting here. I don't get to a particular store, so I'll grab up, you know, several of different kinds of spices because it's like I won't have it, and I literally call it the stash. So when there's, you know, things happening in my residence, or if I need something and it runs out, it's like, okay, well, I know I have it in the stash. Um, so you know that could be taken like a few different ways. It's like, oh well, you know, if you don't drive, you're not going to get there. However, it's like, but are those things available elsewhere? Yes. Yes. Or how about it even better? Can you make them yourself? Can I go and, you know, have an herb garden and dry them and put the herbs together myself and do them? Yes, which would actually probably be more economical, you know. So and we're, yeah, economical. And we, yeah. As women, we're charged, as women in our new, we're charged with being the economy, like, you know, making sure that we are doing that and being that in the home. So if I'm not doing the thing that's more economical, then it is hoarding. And like I said, I call it the stash, right? So those are some things and like behaviors that have to stop, because I'm only it's only um feeding a behavior that creates, like, you know, or feeding a behavior of doing something that no longer serves or doesn't serve me. I wouldn't even say no longer, but that just doesn't serve me. It doesn't add to the home. It literally just takes away, right? A woman, okay, chat's moving. A woman now says, as we have been digging into Chief's lessons of the Jezebel spirit, that idea of I want causes us not to release and instead grab everything and never trusting. Exactly, exactly. And please feel free to give an example. I don't think I shared the link, but I will, for those of you who want to come on. Provisions have already been made. Exactly. Sovereignty says, I think of the way something stretches out and also the way we relinquish the need to control, thus eliminating fear. It brings fear. It brings a level of freedom and liberation. Exactly. And some of that, you know, I want can be control. Or, you know, and it doesn't necessarily come in the form of I want, but just the need to control everything around you or control how other people, you know, move, right? um so we were talking about, oh sorry, our says Ethernet cords and house phone cable. For me, shaking my head, everything's Bluetooth for the most part now. Okay, yeah, the Bluetooth is nice, like automatic automation is nice. I imagine we are contributing to like the AI takeover, but it is what it is. I guess, right? Savardi says they saw pressure burst pipes. So imagine what happens when we don't relieve that pressure that keeps one in a constant space of being full, but full of what? And you know, it makes me think of appendix, you know, and because the appendix, and this could be wrong, But I remember learning, like, long time ago, those days, like when I was younger, like, because when you hear people who have like appendicitis, it was like, well, what is that? And the appendix is like, a little, I don't know if it's an organ, if it's considered an organ, but it literally collects waste. And it's like, well, so it's like the waste that doesn't necessarily eliminate any other ways. It doesn't necessarily go through the filters like the kidneys, and then, or liver, and it becomes urine or feces, whatever. How we eliminate. So that's where it goes. And so when it's full, you can, I think it's a appendicitis, because it become inflamed, and then you have to have surgery, to remove it. But that comment, Achoti Yaffe, made me think of that, like, when it doesn't eliminate, or when the pouch that you have to collect that waste for your lifetime is full, then what happens? It bursts. It can burst. And then there's an overflow of whatever that thing is. Sorry, they say. Huh? I don't. You might have to elaborate. Sorry, I don't know what you mean. Um, I want control. Jason Steve says I got them piles of cords too. Yeah, I think we probably all got cords. And yeah, and yes, and there are a lot of Jezebels that want control. And that really feed on being on top of every situation, and have to uh, be on top of like how everyone moves. Once come from a desire. If we have all these desires, we're not surrendering to the will of Yah, and we lose out. Release reminds me of release, a new lease, letting go allows us new experiences. I like the idea of a new lease on life. LOL. Sure. Um. So the other part, like new, and you know what? Actually, like pulling from the new lease on life, and like bringing it back to like even the body, right? We use like water, for example, like to flush out toxins, because they manifest in so many ways. And one thing that it made me think of was like cellular regeneration. And not that we're going to go too deep on cellular regeneration, but Chief has mentioned this time before, and some of you may have already known this or heard of it, about how our body generates or regenerates every 7 years. And that's the average. Is it true for every single cell? Because we have trillions of cells in our bodies. No, it's not true for every single cell. Some stay with us from the day we're born to the day we die. Some regenerate much faster. They can generate in a matter of months, in a matter of weeks. It depends on what organ and where they are. But on average, the body regenerates, the cells regenerate every 7 to 10 years. And so I thought that very significant. But we usually say 7 years, right? And so I thought it significant when reading scripture, and in Deuteronomy, when the Hebrews are receiving the law, well, the Levites are receiving the law from Yah. Yah tells them, and this is Deuteronomy 15:1, and I'll just, that one part right there. Deuteronomy 15:1 says, at the end of every 7 years, thou shalt make a release. And what's happening in that moment is Yah is giving them instructions on how they release one another from debt, right? And so if we think about like that debt is that old stuff, right? Or those toxins that we're holding on to. And I'll read a little bit further when it goes into 15:2. And so Deuteronomy 15:2 says, and this is the manner of release. Every creditor that lendeth ought unto his neighbor shall release it. He shall not exact it of his neighbor or of his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. And I'll keep going. Of a foreigner thou mayest exact it again, but that which is thine with thy brother, thine hand shall release. Save when there shall be no poor among you, for the Lord shall greatly bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it. And I'll stop there. Because I took just that part, and it's giving instruction on how to, release one another from debt. And even in that releasing one another from debt, it doesn't necessarily have to be talking about money, but releasing from transgressions or releasing from certain things. And sometimes like, and it doesn't just, and sometimes it does, it's not going to necessarily come like, I released you. I think somebody did. I released you. I don't know. Some of you might get that reference. I released you, right? It has to be through through actual engagement with one another and talking with one another. And I knew we have conflict resolution. So, and it was just being shared with me this dawning that dawning. It's being shared with me this dawning that, it's not necessarily for, to be a place where it's like, I hate you and I need to like, get back at you. But it's like, let me like, let's have this conversation peacefully so that we can move forward. That is a give thanks for whoever did that. That is the, true like releasing, so, and even though this says every 7 years, it doesn't mean that we have to, wait for every 7 years. So just making the correlation between how our body naturally generates, those cells naturally regenerate, and even in Levitical law, that we are to every 7 years release those debts, forgive our debts. I forgot it, but you know where I was going. But forgive those debts, as creditors. But you don't have to, and that's the Lord's release. That's every 7 years. But you don't have to wait for that 7 years, right? When it comes to like that cellular regeneration, like I said, there's constant activity, but it really is like the 7 to 10 years. The chat's moving. I see y'all. I'm gonna come there. I'll be right there. So yeah. So the other part that I wanted to talk about was like releasing, and you know what? I will go to the chat because I don't want to like shift gears before I like read what everybody was saying. Sabini says, Chief Yuya, yep, true about the mini jars that we save to stash those items. Stop, Maria. The pop shop stores. We shop at just to buy organizers to put the items in. Oh, I'm so guilty. That's like, well, if I get this organizer, it's not hoarding, or I'm going to put these things in these glass jars. Listen, I did a whole post about like glass jars, like, when you're juicing, like it's good to save them. And at a point, and I got to a point where it's just like, I have so many glass jars, and I'm not, stripping them fast enough to where it's becoming like I just got a bunch of bottles in the cabinet. So it's like, okay, so how many of them can be given away? So that they're not being hoarded, because then also someone who doesn't have the glass jars, which we should be using, it's better than plastic, they can also have some into their space, and it actually is something that someone else can use, and it's paying it forward rather than hoarding it to the cows come home. But yes, we'll end up at places like Pop Show. Dang it, I just gave them advertisement. But whatever. We'll end up at stores that, have all these things, these little thrift stores, or like, very inexpensive stores is another one where it's like below a certain amount of money, which I like that place too. And we end up finding ourselves there like to organize the hoarding. And it's like, what are you doing? Ima Sequoia says, Sovereignty, what you shared reminds me of why women are made free, because her relinquishing control allows her to function in her feminine role as the man, and leads. Okay. Women, so the scripture does make me think of emotions we hold a person hostage in our own minds, and hearts, along with the value of doing so, create a space with what is new. Wait, were those two different things? Hold on. Okay, no, I think it was the same thing. Okay. And give thanks for who is manning the ALGM, because I did forget to put the link in the chat. But it is open for those of you who do want to join in the show. Want to be a part of the show. Or join into the live, I should say. And talk, and feel free. So, and thank you everyone for giving the examples of what it means to release. So another question that I had for y'all was, and thinking about like some of the examples and true stories, true confessions that I gave, how do you release? And do you keep track of what happens? And what I mean by that is like, and they don't have to be TMI, because, and I'm thinking back on like some of how we discuss in some of our red wrap events. Like we open and we get, we talk about like what happens with our bodies. But I say that to say, like, I'm talking about like physical. So what happens that you notice with yourself when you release? So how do you do it? Is it even if it's something as like, you do go through the house and declutter, at a certain amount of time of the year or a certain number of times, or you have, when you do it, you have a routine on how you get it done, or you notice what the body is eliminating, that maybe and something that is more than what your daily elimination may be. The value of releasing. I Are you saying along with the value of releasing, doing so creates? I think if that's what you're saying, just put a thumbs up. I like burning stuff. That is so fun. Let me tell you, Master Man, like the burning stuff, it is cathartic. I'm telling you, when I do go back to the fire pit and I just stand there and look at the flames and I just burn stuff, and I know that they are gone forever, forever. They are gone. They just embers in the sky somewhere, and willfully they have not caught to a tree, and but it's something that has to be eliminated. And I like burning it too, because it's like, okay, now it's really gone. And I would say, like, even the burning it, because it's not just like thinking about like when you put out your trash, it's still going somewhere, most likely to a landfill, but and sometimes if it's recycled, okay, great, it gets reused if it does. But when I always feel like when I'm putting something, yes, I said feel, I always think when I'm throwing stuff out, that it's not really going away, it's just being transported out of this physical space. So the reality is that thing is still in the ether somewhere, it's still there. So some things, okay, all it needs is being removed from the physical space, because like, I don't burn all the clothes that I don't wear anymore. They're given to someone else, and then the energy can shift and transmutate, as it needs to. But something, they have to be eliminated, and burning is the only way. It's the only way to do it. And I think there are quite a few of us, one of us carried a nickname, but I think there are quite a few of us that really like to burn things. It's fun, and it actually gets the job done. Answer: journaling and stretch movement helps me release a great deal. Ani Radio says, I've been exploring journaling, and that's been helping lately. Breathing exercise. I'm reading that like a monotone crazy person. I've been exploring journaling, and that has been helping. Lately. Breathing exercises, walking by water also works wonders. It does. I noticed that when I'm at the beach, it takes off a lot. Like, I don't know if any of you have experienced like being at the beach and walking away feeling like a totally different person. Like, you don't even have to speak, but just the ebb and flow of the waves, it does so much, to kind of move with your thoughts and take whatever needs to go away out and like bring in the new, right? More fire. Right. Ruska says detoxing and using herbs and for fasting has been useful for me. Fasting is good. And that was actually one of the remedies for addressing the Jezebel spirit was fasting, and I think it may not have been shared in the podcast, but it was shared in one of our study sessions. And I know we have study sessions on Wednesday that are very interesting a lot of times. One of the questions was like, how do we get rid of it? And you basically have to starve it out, and not necessarily fasting. It's not necessarily fasting from food, but it's fasting from behaviors, fasting from thoughts, fasting from old habits. Like, you literally have to starve her out. Starve her out. Right, more fire burned. Okay, we got some pyro people. bunch of pyromaniacs. But yeah, the fire is fun. Speaking of pyromaniac, interestingly enough, I've been saying to some people, like, I can't go burn stuff because there's a tree in the way. And upon further inspection, it was realized that the tree fell because it got struck by lightning. So number one, I was very grateful. I was like, thank you, y'all, because that, number one, the tree could have fell another way. And number two, it was like, I'm glad it struck there and instead of someplace else, and could have become something larger. But it also was interesting that, it was like, oh, is that what it sounds like? I don't know that I heard the lightning itself strike, but I definitely heard like the swish swish as the tree was falling, because it seemed like it was a slow fall. But yeah, it was struck by lightning. It's charred and the leaves are burned everywhere, and it was like, oh, that's what happened. I thought it was the wind. No, lightning strike. So that's something to definitely look into. I'm not, to like lightning strike on the property. So yes, I'll keep going back over to the chat for like how you release, and do you keep track of what happens? So like, yes, some of you answered like how you release, but do you keep track of what happens when you release? Like how does your body, or how does the physical present itself like when you release? I run off to the bushes and hills and hide in nature. I know someone else who likes to do that. We won't say who they are. So yes, and here's the other thing. So like, and really talking about releases, because it's important. Releasing to be more anew, because the more of the old world that we hold on to ourselves, is the less that we're able to really. That's like filling up that appendix, right? So to the point where it bursts, and then it's like, well, now something needs to be excised. Yeah, now something needs to be excised. So how do we do that? We study, we uphold the edicts, we have to actually live it. And sometimes they're not, and sometimes it may seem difficult, but it's really not, right? And I say that because I think to myself, like, what are the excuses that I make to say, well, I can't do this because of that. So recently, I am in a specific office location, right? And it's a hybrid. And I was like, I have to be very clear about how I move, and like what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. And so if you get the opportunity, sometimes it's like, okay, well, it's not only if it's hybrid, but we get to kind of like maneuver a little bit with the hours. And I walked in thinking that it was, the hours were going to be set for this one thing. And then after speaking with a supervisor, was like, no, this is how it happens. And I was like, oh, that's even great. And so what I thought was, oh, I should do it like this. But it was like, don't keep that inside your head. Share it with her, like why you're doing that, right? So that you are making it very clear that this is how you practice. This is your culture. And so I said, I'm going to do this hour to this hour, so that when the time changes, I can leave before it gets dark, because I observe Sabbath, and I don't want to be caught outside driving home from work when it's dark, because, it starts to get darker earlier and earlier. So if I am able to leave by this time, then that's one less thing I have to worry about. And instead of just saying like, oh, I'll take this, it was important to share that word. And that's like small, like, don't get me wrong, that's like totally small, because some of it I am, showing like in the way that I dress, like, not going to be coming, with the hair all out and everything. But it was also in, making it clear and known, this is what I practice. This is how I practice. And so these are some of the things that I won't be doing, with everybody else, or different from everybody else, because I practice this way and it's important to me. So that's like a small example. Let's see, like fire in chat. Master Melik says, sometimes the release is not as clean as we may think it is, and things may need to be released in stages. Each stage of release can encourage us to address deeper levels of our attachment. Give thanks for that. Fire, I kid you not, that's Melik. So let me just put that up. Sometimes the release is not as clean as we may think it is, and things may need to be released in stages. Each stage of release can encourage us to address deeper levels of our attachment. And Sabinese says, fire, Master Leg. I kid you not. I sometimes wonder why, but I release by burning or staring at fire. Okay, I thought I was a weirdo for staring at like burn stuff. I journal, study, doodle, and attempt to draw. And you know what? I'm so glad you put that, Koti Maria, because it actually was Matthew Minulik that said something during a study session that stayed with me, and it actually was the reason why, like, when we do art, like, instead, like, adding on to, like, because I love it, like, we paint for, like, and this was a technique that Koti Maria brought to us, that is so much fun. And normally I should have put some of their artwork behind me because it's dry, but I won't. They can do, I won't do that because I do like to be like, this is nice. But we did paint pouring, and I have had some of them like behind me or whatever. But instead of the paint pouring, one particular session that we had, I was like, I'm gonna try to draw. And the reason was because something Massimilian said. He said, because I always made the joke, like, I'm a good doodler. If you want stick figures, I'm your woman. like, I will do stick figures. I make dresses, I make pants, I make big heads, little heads. I do all of that with stick figures. But he said, the reason why I'm a good artist, or the reason why I can draw very well, is because I pay attention to detail. And so that really stuck with me as, like, if you're going to do something, if you're going to even release, or even like in those stages, it's like, pay attention to the detail of what's coming out. So when you can take that in and then release it. He's able to take it in and release it through the drawing. So in instance, like, that's even a release. And so, like, I started to try doing that. Like, I started with like a heart, like an actual human heart drawing, and like, but make it like elaborate or whatever. And then like flowers and roses, and they were coming out really nice. I did kind of take a pause on it, but I'll have to pick it up. But the point is, like, the drawing and the doodling and the attempt to draw, like, those are, and sometimes we may not think so, but those are really good, like, ways to release. Like, journaling is great, but if you have an art or a talent, innate or learned, it is good to do those things. And then think about, like, for those of us, or those of you who have innate talents, hone your skills. Those are the ways that we're going to release. And because it, that release comes forth or comes through as a talent, is something that can be shared, and marveled at sometimes, right? Massimilian says, or true, it is that, or you can burn the whole thing, but sometimes that's illegal. It makes me think of that post you shared, like, I think it was a Wayne X said when she burned the car, like, yeah, that's illegal. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's on your property. That's illegal because it's dangerous. We can't do that. Because then it's like, it might be a little bit Jezebel-y. Like, don't just be going to burn stuff because you're angry. Not in that way. You can't just be, you gotta be sensible about it. Like, even in the release, like the timed release, it has to make sense. Like, how we're moving through those thoughts and feelings, right? Because you might be, I just had to get it out. Did you? Or was that really releasing and you just unleashing, which is lack of control, right? Ema Sequoia says, answer, accepting the need to let something go helps me to release it. I always feel lighter when I'm able to release. Sabrini says, hiking is my ultimate. Yep, I knew she was going to show up. Hiking is my ultimate way to release when I can. Yes, so, for those of us who like to go and hide in the woods, like, we need chaperones because some of us like hiking. Hint, hint. So yes, so give thanks for, how do you release, and like, but I'm still waiting. How do you keep track? Like, how do you know what's happening? So as I was saying, like, it's really important that we do that, in our new, because then if we're not, then we are still stuck in that stage of like 1 foot in and 1 foot out, right? So releasing the old to make room for the new, getting that new lease, should be a priority. So making sure that we're not still engaging in those old behaviors because of old mindsets, right? Because we have to think, like, if we're still engaging in a behavior, like, whether it's how we eat, or if we're working on Sabbath or whatever we're doing, if we're not acknowledging Sabbath in the way that we should, then we have to think, like, well, what's the source of that? Why are we really doing it? Is it because we're not as fully committed? Like, what's going on? So yeah, like I said, it's not just food and fitness, but finances. How many of us are still not keeping the Sabbath because of finances? A vital edict that we not remain financial infants. So like, we're all charged, and as a required quality, even as a woman, like, I'm charged with being industrious. So if does it mean that I should start, rest in having a job with someone else? No, I have to do something different. And so it means, like, sit down and figure out how you be industrious. And yes, that's listening to instruction and then doing appropriately, not resting and getting lazy, to not to make the excuse to not create, our own passive income, or finances in that way. How do we get there? Operating at full capacity. How do we make sure that we're all pulling our weight, or we're all moving at full capacity, and not stopping on the sidelines, and knowing what to do? Study, deliberate, expanding our knowledge base, becoming entrepreneurs, and really holding one another accountable. And that the accountability is a part of that. And I'm sure, like, and even if you're not a member of ANU, but you're looking to be a member of ANU because you want somebody to hold you accountable, like, yes, I think, like, that's a good thing, to want to be held accountable. At the same time, it's personal responsibility and not being lazy, right? Because that's a part of holding you accountable. Like, if you're being lazy because you don't want to think. But some of you are not necessarily members, but I'm sure you understand the idea of accountability, and someone holding you to a standard, right? And making sure that you meet that standard. And that's what that is. We are here to make sure that we all meet a specific standard. And if that means, like, well, you have to let this go in order for you to move forward and move fully within the charge, then that's what has to be done. That's what has to happen. Oh, there's chat stuff. Master Manilex says, Chief Yuya has also pointed out the importance of why something needs to be removed from our lives. Paraphrasing. Yes. Like Chief Yuya said it. Acknowledging why. I didn't know what you said. Oh, acknowledging. The importance of acknowledging why something needs to be removed from our lives. Skip things. And that's a good point, Yaffe. I enjoy making pottery. There's something so cathartic and meditative about fashioning clay. I've done that. Why do I keep doing this? And pottery is a lot of fun. I actually made, like, a bowl somewhere in New York. I have a bowl somewhere in New York. Willfully, somebody's enjoying it. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, fashioning things that again, like, whether it's something, an innate skill or talent that you have, because you can put all of that into the thing and transform it into something else, and transform it into something beautiful. One thing that I have done before is, like, glass blowing, but it's glass blowing, but it's specifically lamp working, because glass blowing is a little bit larger, which I will be trying to get into later. But lamp working is how you actually make glass beads. Again, it's working with the fire. So clearly, there's something there. So I'll let y'all know how it is, when I start working with the fire again. Like, I like those big old hot ovens, and fashioning something out of a glob, or fashioning something out of nothing, because it is a release. So those are, that's kind of like what I wanted to point out, how we release, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and taking, like, and showing, like, how we release physically in that physical space, how it helps to release those emotional things, right? And if we don't, like, like the person who doesn't sweat, what happens? Or the person whose appendix fills up, it bursts, or you overheat, and it's not good for you, for your body. It's not good. And then also the other way that we should release or have to release, especially as being anu, is letting go of the old so that we truly make room for the new. And also thinking like, have we released or have we just repackaged it into something else? So I will leave you with that. That is our midday affirmative. I give thanks for everyone who joined in. Creating is a great tool for release or just allowing for one to open up more. Did you mention this already? The tracking of our pattern is critical. If not, then meditation and other. You know what? Yeah, I did not. I did not mention that. Of course, I'm ready. Give thanks. It wasn't in my notes. I'm sorry. Did you mention this already? Tracking of our pattern is critical. If not, then meditating and other forms of release is probably just a form of self-soothing. And that comment, and I was trying to dig into this more, and maybe because I sometimes deliberate, and I haven't done the deliberation with the sisters in a minute because I told y'all like I don't do these middays by myself anymore. We're gonna prep, but I haven't done it in a while. But maybe that's something we could do on study session or when we prep in the womb, or study or whatever. But it did come or now, but it did come up like when I was listening to the Jezebel series, and I think it was the episode on solipsism. So it was number 4. And somebody just put in the chat if I got that wrong. But I think it was the one on solipsism where Chief talks about the woman who, if she's rationalizing her feelings with other feelings. That one was clarified for me recently because I was like, if I rationalize too much, then I'm lying. It just lies. But it's rationalizing the feelings with the feelings, and she's lying. He says it. I kid you not. He's like, and I'll say it again. She's lying. And part of that in that same thread was, it's like, well, shouldn't I get to know myself more? Or, and I don't know if she sounds like that, but shouldn't I get to know myself more? Or she meditates a lot. That's what he said. And I immediately was like, okay, so even in that, like, yeah, we can do these things to release, but it has to be in a right way. It can't just be like that's the pattern, because yes, you're right, Achoti Maria. Then it becomes a form of self-soothing or just sitting in a corner and I'll just forgive myself for this behavior rather than truly addressing it. Master Manuelek said, oh, I keep doing that. Hopefully y'all don't see that thing that's popping up on the screen when I do that. Master Manuelek says, repentance also comes to mind. Yes. Repentance also comes to mind, especially regarding the latest segment in the Jezebel Spirits series. Give thanks. For those of you who don't have it, give thanks. Aki Jason says, so true. Without acknowledging why and the knowledge behind it, I just repeat it over and over. You know what? Give thanks for that, because if we're not fortunate enough, like in Anu, we can be in spaces where, or in a space where you have a sister or brother that tell you you're repeating this behavior. What you have to do is do XYZ to be better. Don't repeat the behavior, or to show us when we're repeating, or our coverings, to show us when we're repeating a behavior so it can be stopped. Does it happen immediately right away? No. Are some of us still repeating specific behaviors and then acting like, I'm trying? Yes, but then this is why we have one another, to the accountability and to keep one another honest. Master Manuelek says, thank you for that point. I'm sorry, Sovereignty says to Master Manuelek, thank you for that point. We do release in that way. Many times we are never open to see the deeper issues if the superficial layers are not addressed. And that's I think you're speaking to I'm going to just say segmented release, release in layers so that you can get to the deeper. I think if that's not it, please correct me. Master Manuelek says exactly, and it gets mislabeled as self-love or self-heal. Oh, okay. You were talking about the other thing. Thank you for that. We do really, yes. And then it's the like, I'm looking into myself, and sometimes, a lot of times, we can't see our backs. We cannot see our own bags. Someone else has to tell us what's there. We can't see it. And yes, sometimes we can feel things or whatever, but you cannot see your own six. That's what, watch my six. You can't see your own six. Someone else has to watch your six. So you watching your own six, that'll be mislabeled as like self-love or self-healing, and not noticing those patterns so that you can move. Peace, Marjorie. All right, nice to see you. Yeah, see you. Hi there. Channeling Aki El Karar. Sometimes we can't even say to ourselves, I need to stop while say it again for people in the back. Sometimes we can't we even I said that wrong. Sometimes we even say to ourselves, I need to stop while doing it. And it's like, but then the question is, but do we stop? Do we just acknowledge that we're doing it and just be like, okay, that's something that I have to fix? Or do you actually stop in the moment and then acknowledge that you're doing it in the moment? Black Girl Magic Circles love phrases like self-love. All is well and coming in a little. Oh, don't worry. We are at the end, but don't worry. The link, I will say the link is in the chat if anybody did want to come in. If not, I'm gonna keep going. I was coming down, but based on like some of the conversation, there was something else I wanted to add. When we release, we do see our own inner, we can see our inner light, or we allow others to see it. I'll say it like that. And then it made me think of like the celestial ember. Can you imagine a celestial ember, unadulterated throughout the ages, right? So when we release, then we're able to find one another. It makes me think of like fireflies, or even like, being in the dark and being on a dark road, but then seeing like that light, or a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I can see you because I've released these things, I can see you because I've released that fear and I'm able to move through. So I can see that there actually are people here. There actually are there are ALIs here. There is community here. So I can see you because I'm no longer allowing those things to remain that don't serve me, or that only serve, negative parts of me that need to be burned away. So now I can see I can see that good fire, right? Just finished this tub of Rocky. I can't stand you. I've had those moments. I just finished this up with Rocky Road and not go on a diet tomorrow. Let me tell you, for me, it was this caramel ice cream and it was Haagen-Dazs. And I used to murder those tubs. And it's just like, you need to stop. I was like, I'll stop tomorrow. Yes. And that's real. Like, it's not, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. Noticing it while we're doing it, I'll address it later. No bueno. And because if you may not live to tomorrow to address it later. So it has to be addressed in the present. We have to be, we have to acknowledge the present, because then if so, then you'll miss the light. Maybe you'll miss that turn. Maybe you'll miss that turning signal. You're supposed to get off this road and go to a better one that's smoother and doesn't have all those scrapes on it. When they scrape the road and you're driving on and make your car all bumpy, If you're not paying attention, you'll miss the turn off to the place that's easier. And that was it. That's all I had for you today. So willfully, we start this strong with a powerful release, whether it is physical, because sometimes it has to be physical. And so if it's that physical, whether it is that fasting from behaviors, fasting from thoughts, releasing clutter, releasing those physical things. Maybe it's emptying out those jars. I don't know. Maybe you have something to build, but maybe it's emptying out those jars of screws and nuts and bolts. Maybe it's opening up this box I have over here and getting rid of the cords, because some people still do use them. And if I truly have no use for any of the cords in this box, literally walking out the house today and getting rid of them, right? or this strong. So I will that all of you, and I remember, like, y'all can hold me to it. Y'all can check to see if I burn that last box of papers that I have to burn. We can talk about it next time. I think I'm up next week as well. I'm not sure, but we'll talk sovereign needs, like whoever's supposed to be. Oh, Master Millionaire. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
Peace.
You know, the way my checking and my savings works now.
Mm-hmm. Right. When my accounts are set up.
Right. I didn't see it.
Peace. Shalom. How you doing, sister?
I'm doing well. Doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I can't complain.
Okay.
As you were speaking about release, I was actually I was watching I grew up in the era of video games, and they've come a long way. And that nowadays they're almost like full length movies. Like they have real paid actors wearing the gear and stuff, and they just do motion capture. And there was one story I was watching, and I'll give you the short of it. But basically, it was dealing with Norse mythology, and one of the characters in the game, they took their liberties with it, but one of the characters was Freya, right? Freya is Odin's wife, and she you in the Marvel universe you only see Thor and Loki, but Freya and Odin have a son named Balder,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was foretold that he would die. That he would die, and in order to prevent this, Freya cast a spell on him that would make him invulnerable to everything
Mm-hmm.
except for mistletoe, right? The
Mm-hmm.
plant mistletoe. Like people,
Yeah.
with it, yeah, mistletoe, right? And what happens is um, the other reason why she doesn't want him to die is because his death signals the beginning of Ragnarok, which is like
Ragnarok.
the end of the world. So we don't want Balder to die, right? And
Yeah,
people
right.
used to actually, in the mythology, they used to actually make like it was like a game. Let's see who could come up with a creative way of killing Balder because we know it won't work.
And we know.
Um,
Well,
but in
we
the
know.
video game, it's they take it to uh, what comes to mind is felinism. That I think that was part 5 of the Jezebel series. I might be wrong. Part 5 or 6, and dealing with how this need for control actually distorts a person's development, right? Typically with the sun. And in this game, Balder, this was like 100 years after Balder was born, and he resents Freya for doing that because it's like she stole his life from him. He can't feel anything. I
Yeah.
can't feel warmth. I can't feel cold. I can't feel pain if I'm fighting. I can't feel nothing. I'm just here, numb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually he goes insane, and he has this vendetta against his mother. Main character of the game comes along, right? God of War, you got it, Avo Raskosh. Main character of the game comes along, and he and his son successfully kill Balder. And this is to the chagrin of Freya, who was so hell bent on controlling her son because she gave up everything for her son. She gave up her whole realm. She gave up her life in Asgard. And she's exiled, and she's like, okay, as long as he's safe, then that's all that matters. As long as he's safe, my sacrifice, wasn't in vain. So when the main character kills him, she swears vengeance on the main character and is like, yo, this dude is literally about to kill you. You know what I mean? So they reconcile and everything. But rather than saying, I I don't want to kill you,
Mm-hmm.
she's like, oh, I'm still so angry, because I guess now's the time when I'm supposed to either forgive you or kill you. But to be honest, I'm not sure if I could do either because I'm still so angry. But I realized that you're not the one who needs to die. And I thought it was interesting because she didn't have like a clean break with what she was holding on to, that resentment, because the control she had was based on resentment. And when the thing that she based her control on, which was her son being safe, when that was gone, all of that resentment came bubbling back up. And she's like, "You're not the one who deserves to die," and she shifts her revenge to someplace else. So, like you were saying, she didn't really get rid of it or release it. She just shifted the target,
Mm-hmm.
and that came to mind. And there was a lot of self-soothing in a lot of her lines in the game until the end of the game. She's like, "Okay, yeah, I thought of what I would do when I got to this point, but you know what? I don't need this to make me whole anymore." And that was the actual release. Like and it showed her physically releasing something. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I thought that was an interesting take on it because even in the mythology, like she had that idea of, I'm gonna stop every bit of harm from coming to this person. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that can harm him is mistletoe, and of course Loki finds a way to make that lethal
Yeah,
as a joke.
that's
But
so.
I'll leave that alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the trickster will always
Yeah.
figure it out because and I don't know. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think like the trickster is like the fool too, if I'm not mistaken. And like when like Chief has done segments on like those four archetypes: the wizard, the fool, the thief, and the warrior. I want to say
It was the warrior, the thief, the wizard, and the priest.
the
It was
priest.
those four.
Where did the fool come in?
Right.
There was
The
something
fool
about.
could be any one of them.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
any of them could be a fool.
Because the fool is not
Yeah.
always a fool. Sometimes, they're a fool when they need to be, but they're actually paying attention to everything.
Right. And the fool is often the one who is willing to try something new.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I was talking. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we overlap because, I got to buy a case of the Wi-Fi's. But
I,
yeah, I was saying the fool is also the one who's willing to try something first.
right, right. And so,
Yeah.
and you do that also that doing, that's what gives you the understanding of a thing. So,
Hmm. Yeah, and
yeah.
sometimes you're called a fool for being willing to release certain things. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would never let someone talk to me like that. No one could ever get away with doing something like that to me. Like, you're a fool for letting them off the hook. It's like, I'm not attached to this. How could you be? You're more attached to this than I am, and it happened to me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Mm-hmm.
you're telling me what you would have done in my situation. You know, and you're not respecting whatever the choice is that I just made.
Right.
And sometimes you need people to tell you, no, that wasn't smart. But from a logical knowledge base um, perspective and standpoint, not necessarily flying off into a rage or having, getting emotionally upset just because someone didn't make the decision that you thought they should have made. Because some people just want a release by proxy. I want to feel that cathartic release from watching someone else go off, quote unquote. Those are like the most viewed videos on the internet. It's a fight
Mm-hmm.
video.
Mm-hmm.
So and so goes off. So and so destroys. So and so. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's always something where I could get a cathartic release from it.
Mm-hmm.
Which was something else that Chief had touched on in the most recent Jezebel series. Like you're looking for this dopamine hit. You're looking for this quick dopamine hit, and you're so totally given off to these spirits and demons that are really prompting you to give them what they need to feed on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that you don't realize, okay, there's a reason why I'm not satisfied when I do a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
I we, I just finished having sex and I roll over and I'm still, like the
Wanting.
example you give it, you still wanting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And then you just feel it's like energy, like just sucking the energy out of everything because I'm not satisfied. I don't want to say what that. I don't want to say those two words. I can't. I can't satisfy myself. I wanted to say something else, but not in that context. But since you just brought up the example that Chief made, I don't want to say that. But I think you get what I'm saying.
You talking about self-love?
Yeah.
I think that's what they got. I think that's what the kids are calling it now. Self-love.
Yeah, I can't do this self-love thing right now. Well, I have to do
Yeah.
this self-love thing right
Yeah.
now.
Or explore yourself. I think that's the other one they
Right,
use.
that one,
Yeah.
right.
You
I can't
explore
do that,
yourself.
so I can release, this, but I'm still empty. I'm still empty inside.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it is like, and then that's what leads to like the repackaging, like I'm gonna try this,
Mm-hmm.
but repackaging on what it is. So it's got a nice new brand new, box with a nice bow on it, but the same crap is in the inside.
Right.
Um,
And you go on
right.
this roundabout journey.
Yeah. In circles. Going in circles. I don't know if those are the lyrics, but that's the song I was thinking of. So Renee says, right, the fool takes on any personality that is needed. Give thanks. Give thanks. Because I was like, I thought you were talking about the fool, but I always would mix those archetypes up. And then I think he was also saying like the wizard and the magician are interchangeable, or they're different.
Mm-hmm.
They're interchangeable.
He has talked about that on another segment. I remember him touching on the fool, and he had also referenced the tarot deck.
Mm-hmm.
Given the example of the fool from there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I do remember that
I
one. I
don't
don't
think they.
remember that one
Yeah,
too. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Give thanks, Master Like I appreciate that. And jumping on.
no problem. Give thanks for letting me in.
I
Finally. But
I
yeah,
looked down, I was like, what's that red number? I said, why is it one right there? Oh, somebody in the guest room. Somebody in the waiting room. I don't know how long you were there, but I apologize. But thank you for coming on the show.
it's smart.
Uh,
It's smart. Give thanks.
give thanks. Peace. Um,
Peace.
and it is open for anyone else that wants to join, but if not, and I know there's a delay, but if not, we're gonna close it down. Give thanks again for Master Leg for joining. Give thanks for all of you for participating in the chat. I forgot my words for a second. Participating in the chat. So peace. Have a start your 6 strong. Release whatever doesn't serve you, so that you can detox from whatever doesn't serve you. We talk a lot about like our fasting and Ramadan, and come to think of it, at the end of this month we got a solstice coming up toward the end of the month, so we will be fasting. So for those of you like who have listened to this, or you listened to it earlier, you can fast with us. So you can choose like your 72 hours to fast, and release, detox of the body and the space of what you don't need. And that fast is not always just about food. So detox and release for those things that you don't need. So that is our affirmation for today. Release what is not needed. And it actually is connected to one of the eightfold along the path, don't like speak unnecessary words, that's what I also think of, because some of that is releasing, not even having to, speak too much, because yeah, a lot of the words we say are useless. So release. Relax, relate, release. So yeah, you can do that too. But our affirmative, so we affirm that you release whatever does not serve you. Give thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Yom Rishon. Start your strong. And we will see you on our Thursday, our show and prove with Akiel Karar. We will also see you on Friday Fellowship. We'll be joined by the brothers because the sisters just went. And then again on the midday affirmative. And as always, we are having a retreat. We're always having a retreat. They'll just be at different times. So our next retreat is coming up in August. It is August 24th through the 28th. And it is open for the public to join us. And so our theme this time around is Kingdom Culture. And we invite all of you to, experience that with us and experience what it is to be anew, how we commune with one another, how we have fun, how the women have fun with one another, how the brothers commune with one another, and then how we do it all together in one big pot. So give thanks for all of you for joining, and I will that you have an awesome start to your strong, and we'll see you in the forward. Peace, everyone.